I will tell you that I am a huge fan of people that use information and data to make rational decisions about this hobby. And yes, I know that the hobby isn't always about dollars and cents, but I do appreciate a logical approach to how you choose to spend your hard-earned money, because after all, it is much harder to make money than it is to spend money. But with that said, if you are using data and information to make decisions about the hobby, be warned that data can be misleading. And if you are using census data, it will downright lie to you if you're not careful. Stay tuned. Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to take some time to talk about how the census data will lie to you if you are not careful. I actually did a similar video on this a couple of years ago, but I wanted to revisit the topic because I still get people asking the question about census data and its reliability and the pros and cons of it. So I wanted to create this video to revisit that topic and to provide some additional context and thoughts that maybe I didn't have 3 years ago when I created the first video. One thing again that I will tell you is that if you are using data and information to make informed decisions about the hobby, that is not necessarily a bad thing. I think that you sometimes have to move away from just making decisions that are emotional, that are of the heart, to actually using your head to make informed decisions. So it's in that spirit that I wanted to offer up a few things for people to think about and to consider as they make decisions. Now, one thing that I will tell you right from the top is if you are making decisions based upon census data, the very first question that I would ask is, what census data are you referring to? There are people that reach out and they will say, hey, Reggie, I have this book. There is only one on the census, or a handful on the census. This is a rare book, thus it must be a valuable book. Or, hey Reggie, I have this book and there is only one at this grade. It's a 9.9 or it's a 10. This must be a killer book, right? It has to be valuable because the data would suggest that it is indeed a hard book to find. The reason that I put this out as a cautionary note is because if you're only checking one census, then you're missing out on another. If you were to take a look at the CGC census, for example, you would see that there are roughly 15,000 copies of Hulk 181 out there. For example, really popular book, hot book, in demand. And if you did not take the time to look at the CBCS database, you would not know that there are some additional books that they too have graded. So if you're making a decision just looking at one data set while ignoring the other, that could create some blind spots for you. So you have to look at both data sets. Now, with that said, there are other grading companies out there that do not have population reports or census database that you can tap into. That's another cautionary note that you have to be aware of. PGX, EGS, and also Halo, to my knowledge, do not have census counts, but rest assured they are grading books. Now, they may not be grading the first appearance of Batman, the first appearance of Superman, but they are still grading books, and depending upon what type of book you're about to grade, you could, or buy for that matter, you could be making a slightly uninformed decision because they too might have those books in their registries. Now, this is not a criticism of those other third-party companies. It is just a cautionary note that I want to throw out there for people to consider, that if you're just looking at one data set while ignoring another, then that's bad. And if you're not considering the possibility that the book that you have or are about to buy or whatever might also be graded by these other companies, that too is a little bit of a blind spot. The biggest issue with census data might be what's not in the census. And what's not in any census is the total number of books that were actually printed. This represents the biggest blind spot when it comes to comics and collectibles. And I say that because the census will tell you how many books have been graded. And this is great information to have, but of what total number? That is the big unknown. Yes, we can look at Chromicon to see what may have sold, but we have no clue how many copies were actually printed. And that represents, again, the biggest blind spot that we may have. And yes, you could say that big books like the first appearance of Superman and Batman and Spider-Man are captured. Absolutely. Those are probably already captured in a census report somewhere. But the book that you might be thinking about buying or getting graded potentially will not be, and it's probably still out there somewhere in the world in its raw format. That represents the biggest unknown, and so that has to be considered. That has to be factored in. You cannot just look at the census and say, now I know everything now as a result. No, raw books are out there. Another thing that has to be considered are the warehouse finds. Just last year, we saw a couple of books hit the market at Walmart that were found at a distribution center. Books that we thought were rare, hard to find, really expensive, suddenly started to show up in Walmart 3-packs all across the country. There are potentially books out there that are sitting in someone's warehouse that have yet to be discovered for some reason or another. The same might be said for private collections. People have massive private collections that are still raw, that have never been graded for lots of reasons, that may at some point actually come to market. The same can be said for LCSs that have gone out of business. I remember back in the mid-2000s, I actually went to an antique store that had a massive stockpile of comics that they actually acquired from an LCS that went out of business. There are warehouses and storage units that are full of comics out there that potentially house books. And so again, these are just some of the cautionary notes that I want to flag for people. If they're solely relying upon census data to make decisions, these are things that have to be considered. Now, how impactful are they? I don't know, but I at least want to bring them to your attention. The last and final point that I'll make in this video is about the backlog that currently exists with grading companies. This has to be considered. At present, the turnaround time for the grading companies is about a year. And as a result of that, we have to assume that there are a lot of books that they currently have that they are processing through, cleaning, pressing, and ultimately grading and shipping back to people. There is a massive backlog. Now, you get some insight into this backlog if you watch the video that I release every single month in which I talk about the top 10 most submitted books into CGC. In this video, I give you a preview of the top 20 and the top 10 that are being sent in, but rest assured that there are a lot of books that are on the list that never make it to the video that are being processed by CGC and also by CBCS. So again, if you are looking at the database and you're making a decision today about a book that you have or that you want to buy, you have to factor in, you have to think about the backlog that exists at the grading companies that will eventually change what that census count looks like. With that said, again, I just wanted to offer up a few thoughts. Now, what you do with this, I don't know. I really don't know, but I at least wanted to flag these things for consideration. As always, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. And if you have, I definitely want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment behind. Maybe there are some other things that come to your mind as you think about using these data. Leave those thoughts behind for others so that we can all benefit. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.